Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host Jim Gurley. And yeah, I think what we decided on, Jim, kind of came out of a discussion of the time of year. We were talking about Thanksgiving, we were talking about where everybody was going and who was going where, and it became fairly evident that an interesting topic might be the whole issue of family dynamics, and we're going to do it in the context of Thanksgiving because tomorrow's Thanksgiving. So, and it was an interesting conversation because Jim, you have a phrase that I kind of have grown to love, which is more people, more problems. And if that doesn't speak to family dynamics, I don't know. I don't know what does. And I also gotta believe there's a lot of guys out there, hopefully, that are listening that are like, I would love to hear someone else's opinion on this because my family is so fucked up. I don't even know what to do.
Yeah. Well, every family's fucked up in its
I
own
know.
special way, but
I
yeah,
know.
but yeah, just again put some context to this. On every episode of the Imperfect Men's Club, our tagline is "The imperfection is the perfection." So the imperfection of of a family is it's not perfect, but it's the perfection. Everybody has problems. Also, we have this framework we created of these five areas of our life in no particular order, but our relationship with money, our relationship with the world, our relationship with ourselves, physical, mental health, our relationship with our profession. And today's topic is going to fall under relationship with others. And that
Mhm.
we break that into two subcategories, female and male. Obviously, our mothers, our fathers, our aunts, uncles, and so on, all the way right into what what dynamics play out during this holiday festive season. And I'm saying that with all humor because it also brings out the worst in us and the best in us. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, and I think the other kind of angle on this that we're not going to stick to, but it's part of the discussion, I think, is that this particular holiday and the holidays in general, you experience them very differently when you're
yeah,
0 to 10, when you're 10 to 20, 20 to
yeah,
30, 30 to 40. So
yeah,
that's a theme that we keep coming back to because I think you brought that up, Jim, years ago, and I think it's
hmm
true. Life
yeah,
happens in phases, and whether it's 5 years or 10 years or 15 years
mhm,
is less relevant than they're substantially different phases of life, and you experience this family dynamic
yeah,
in a very different way. I mean, when I sat around the dinner table at Thanksgiving as a kid, we were at the kids' table, and the adults sat
yeah,
at the adults' table. It's completely different. So, let me
mhm.
read the definition of family dynamics just for context.
Sure, yeah,
Family dynamics refer to the patterns of behavior, relationships, and interactions among family members, including their roles, rules, communication styles, and emotional climate. They shape how family members relate to one another, from verbal and nonverbal communication to how conflicts are resolved, and can influence an individual's self definition and emotional health. Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So we have these five components of family dynamics. And before I read the first one, Jim, did you want to jump in and add anything to what you've already said before I do, or just
yeah.
jump
The
in?
only word that I would add to that is traditions. And again, I think that traditions are built over increments. When, tradition when you're 10 years old is very different when you're 20, 30, and 40. So I think it's natural that families try to hold on to some traditions that they've had in
Hmm.
the past. And again, thank God for women, because without them, they're, like you said, you and I'd be happy with a beer and a ham sandwich.
Well, it's funny on LinkedIn, somebody was posting about this most disgusting Thanksgiving traditions, and
Yeah,
green bean casserole and an oyster salad or what. It was just some crazy shit. And a
yeah,
lot of people were like, I don't even like turkey. So
yeah,
it's I can just picture every single family that I know is having a completely different experience,
yeah.
and there is no standard, not when you're our age,
Yeah. Well, the big difference is when there's no children, and I mean children, 10, 15, or 5, 10. The children make it much more festive because the whole event's around the children.
Hmm.
Well, when there's no children, because you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s, then the dynamics change again. So it's a lot of this is driven, through the age of the child. But
It is. It is. That's
to
definitely a lens worthy of consideration. It'll probably pop up a couple times, but
yeah,
so the components of family dynamics. The first one is the roles or the family structure and the composition of the family. the specific roles family members play, such as nurturer, provider, peacekeeper, and family size, who lives together, and cultural backgrounds can also contribute. And that's we were just talking about that. You've got a situation where your wife and father-in-law are going to your son who's just had a child, and I've got both my daughters are with their respective boyfriends in North Carolina and Kentucky, and those
Mhm.
stories are going to come back. But that's a
Mhm.
complete, I mean, it wasn't yesterday that we were all together at the same table, and all of a sudden we're all over the country, you know?
Yeah. The geographic changes that happen over time have a huge impact on this. And yeah, the other one that comes to mind is the I lost my train of thought, but go ahead and expand on that. So,
Well, the interesting one, we were talking about the nurturer, the women, and that if it wasn't for my girlfriend and your wife in our respective cases, that we'd be, sipping on a beer and eating a sub. It's just like, and so thank God for them. We've both been the provider, and I don't know about you, but I was the peacekeeper in my family. I was one of the middle children of four, and I was always, I felt responsible for breaking up arguments, breaking up fights. When we were
yeah,
young, it was like we'd have a tickle thing and people would just start laughing and forget what they were arguing about. And as you get older and you have mothers-in-law relationships, you have grandmothers and grandchildren, and there's
yeah,
usually somebody's addicted to something, somebody's in jail, somebody's got something going on. It's just like, and to
yeah.
your thing at the beginning of more people, more problems, it's like
Promise. Yeah,
all of a sudden it goes from just your family to all these other people that are
yeah,
degrees of relationship away from family,
yeah,
but you kind of have to include them. This is a
yeah.
drunk uncle or whatever,
Yeah, always. Like you said, it's the new members that come in. You never know what they're going to be like. The kids are just kids, especially if you have a bunch of cousins. They're playing around and they're kids. They don't
Yeah.
that much. But it's the newcomers. It's the one that's for the first time is at the table. Like, and then over time, as a kid, you don't realize this, and you're like, who is this person? And either they fit in or they don't. But that's I think always brings some new energy or some new drama to every relationship. So yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Okay, so number two is relationships. So this is the unique bonds between each pair of family members, which can range from close and harmonious to distant and strained. Yeah, we were talking about that in the pregame. I've got two strained. Well, my mother's gone. She's been gone for a number of years, and she was not when she separated from my dad when I was in my 30s. It stopped being we're all going over to our parents' house, and it just became something else. And then she went kind of became a loner, and was insecure, and it was a little bit sad. We would ask her to come, but she would come and she'd stick her head in, she'd have a piece of pie, and then she'd go. She wouldn't stick around. It wasn't a celebration anymore. So, and my younger brother and my younger sister are not communicating with the rest of the family right now in
Mhm.
any responsible way. So I
Yeah,
can only imagine. So it's become and my daughters, like I said, they're away. So it's going to be me and my girlfriend and my son and two friends of hers that have become friends of mine, another lovely couple. So it'll be fun, but it'll be completely different than it was last year and the year before, you know?
yeah. I'm gonna focus or zero in on the harmonious to a distance and strained because
Hmm.
whatever shit went on in the year is going to get surfaced that day because
Yeah.
now you're personally going to be in the same room if there is some. So harmonious. I don't know if it's always harmonious, but
Well, you got,
it,
and you got choices, right?
yeah,
We were talking about it before. I mean, and maybe this will fall into another category, but I'll
yeah,
I'll bleed into it as necessary. But you also have choices, and this is back to our wheel with your ego, right?
yeah. Oh yeah,
Yourself. You can make the choice you've got a decision to make as to where you're going to go and what you're going to do. My
yeah,
decision's already been made, but it was part of a conversation where we had to decide we're going to
yeah,
do it at this house or that house. Who are we going to invite? And then it's like, what am I bringing to the table? Like, I have a tendency, as do you, I would imagine, to be a little stubborn and have a very stern kind of opinion about things, but I don't necessarily always have to bring them up. Like
Yeah.
politics. I think
I was
politics
going
is
to say
going to,
the politics and strained go hand in hand. In this day and age,
yeah,
if politics come up, it's going to turn into conflict. There was a time, it's a few years ago, where I think my sister tried to implement a no politics policy at the
yeah,
dinner table.
yeah.
And I get it kind of worked, but it never does. But that's the strained relationships. You may be getting along, and then politics come up, and you realize how separate people's political views are at
Well,
the table.
it's an interesting topic because on the one hand, I'm of the consideration that I think I should be able to talk about anything I want to talk about, but it's a little naive to think that that's an absolute. That's like I think this year is going to be a little bit better than the last go around, just because the world seems to be moving at least a little bit more towards reasonable. But all you got to do is throw a couple drinks in somebody, and the whole thing could blow up.
All you have to do is mention Trump's name, and the whole thing blows up. So it doesn't even take drinks. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
that is
that's
another difference. There's so many people have stopped drinking, in the recent years, but in the past, it was just a drunk fest. We used to
yeah,
get together and just get drunk
yeah,
and yell at each other. So
yeah. Well, it's
nothing good
also
happens after that.
well, I have when I have too much to drink, I get silly. I don't get angry. And I know
Mhm.
people that get angry, and it's not pretty. And not that silly and oh look, daddy's tired. No, daddy's drunk.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but yeah, you're right. A lot of people have given up drinking, and I've actually played around with that a few times and kind of enjoy the absence of it for a while. But yeah, it's harmonious and distant and strained. Yeah.
well, emotions and alcohol never work well together. So
No.
and there's a lot of emotion built up in a family, and then you pour a little alcohol on top of it. It's going to
Well, I would
explode.
beg to
It'll
differ
implode.
slightly because you were describing just earlier getting together with a couple buddies and having a couple beers and laughing. So
That's
I
not
think it.
family, though.
I
That's a
know,
totally different situation.
I
I'm
know,
talking about
I know.
emotional family. Those emotions built over years,
Yeah.
decades sometimes,
No, it is an important
and
distinction. Yeah.
yeah, it's a difference.
You're laughing about common challenges and common things as well, I'm sure.
Yeah,
But the next one is rules. And I guess that's part of the maybe that your sister, I believe, is what you said, wanted to institute a rule that there were no politics to be discussed. I
right.
think the implicit or explicit rules that govern behavior and interactions within the family, that's interesting. So it's like my my father would, and this is somewhat relevant, somewhat not, he would say the rules were timing, right? This is when dinner is, and everyone is on time or they don't get to eat. And that was including Thanksgiving. Don't use the Lord's name in vain. And when you have other people coming in that didn't grow up Catholic or Christian that drop these, GDs and stuff, it shakes the room up if you're in my house. And my girlfriend, for instance, she doesn't have that same belief, but she knows how serious I take that. And so if she slips, she always apologizes. And that's just an implied rule. That's not even a rule. I've never actually said that to her. She just knows I appreciate that. So I think this goes back to my comment about the ego, but I think if you're going somewhere and you're not sure about who the players are or what moods or emotions certain people might be dragging in with them, you can always just stay quiet, right?
Yeah. Laugh. This reminds me. This is years ago, and I think it was Thanksgiving. It was an event at again. I had a pretty big family, real big. So it's 30 something people or more. And my cousin brings in this I guess I was her boyfriend at the time or something, and he rolls up with him and his friend, I'm quite a bit younger than them, but I'm at that age. I think I was probably playing rugby, not high school, but out of high school, but in
Hmm.
between, maybe 25 or something. I remember this guy came in and he's he's cranked out. You could tell the guy had
Hmm.
been and with his friends. And I remember seeing him trying to interact with my grandmother. And yeah, and then I remember saying, "This is that like this is not right. This is something's wrong about that." And I said, "Hey, Chris, can I talk to you outside?" I took him outside. I think I grabbed him by the neck and just choked him. I said, "Hey, you motherfucker, you know, this is not how we do it here.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you and your friend, you need to go. You leave." And because he was just, you could say it was disrupting. There was rules, but he was breaking the order. It was not being respectful. And he was talking to my grandmother, which I was very
Yeah.
close to,
That'll
but
get
I,
you, that'll
whatever. I
get you
just
pissed
remember,
off. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know
Very,
if I grabbed him by the neck or not, but I definitely told him, "You need to get out of here.
yeah.
You don't belong here. Go
Yeah.
go
It's
somewhere
what,
else and come back when you get it together. But you don't walk into this family on drugs and expect to um, for that to be accepted was just completely lowering the standard. And I
well, I
felt,
think I always was aware of what the rules were, and I took it upon myself when I became the provider to
yeah,
have my own rules. And,
yeah, like I
that
said,
was,
who makes the rules and who enforces the rules, right?
that's right. I had no problem doing both, none,
Yeah,
because it was my place. And I'm like, and I don't want people that are a bad example for my children. I don't want people that are
yeah,
disruptive. And it's always, depending on how many people you have over, you could always, I'm thinking back now as we're talking about, you look over to a particular area of the living room or the back porch or
yeah,
whatever, and you see a little group of people. Maybe it's just two people, maybe it's three people, but
yeah,
sometimes those conversations are light and lively and
yeah,
funny. But sometimes you got to go walking over there and say, "What's going on? What's going on?"
yeah,
Just like,
yeah.
I don't like the look on your faces.
Well,
And
it was really just putting the fear of God of him in him so that he would, when he came around, he was aware that there was this resistance, there was this threat that
mhm.
that wasn't going to be acceptable. And if somebody doesn't do that, then pretty soon that becomes the norm. So there are some rules, there are some behaviors that just should not be tolerated if you want to maintain a certain standard.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking about it in the context of business earlier,
Yeah,
and that is that if you don't question or investigate a
yeah,
particular bad behavior, you're immediately condoning it.
that's
And
right.
then as time goes by, now you're
It
encouraging it.
becomes normal. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are. That becomes the norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Silence is not cool when something's
yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
So, speaking of which, number four is communication. So what they've defined here in communication is the methods family members use to communicate, including verbal and nonverbal language, and how they handle disagreements, authority and
Hmm.
power, and the degree of influence and control each member has over others. It's kind of what we were talking about. I mean, in my experience, it's the nonverbal stuff that can be even more powerful than the verbal stuff, and that's a dirty look, or a frustrated look, or a who the fuck are you look. It's just like, and not to be misogynistic, but my experience, mostly that's the women that are doing that. They're not coming out and talking about it. Like what you described, what you did, that's a guy thing. Like a woman would never do something
Yeah,
like that, right? But
yeah,
they'll give you a dirty look, and I've had a couple of piercing ones over the years that I'd rather have you throw something at me than give me that look.
yeah.
But and
Yeah, again, some of the stuff gets personal, so I got to be careful how much I want to share. But yeah, I do know that more people, more problems. When more people come into the conversation, and now all of a sudden you're in between, maybe a mother and her daughter. That's a danger zone. There's places where
yep,
you either get pulled into by no choice of your own, and then before you know it, you're in between them, and whatever dynamics they have are playing out on you. And
yes.
it's also very common for them to turn on you because often they're looking for the villain. So if somebody tries to stay, maybe has a strong position, initially they're going to both turn on you, and then before you know it, you're going to become part of the problem. So
Well, yeah, no, it's true. And one of the most interesting ones for me was as soon as the boys had wives, and the mother-in-law wife dynamic was,
yeah,
at least in my experience, it didn't work out very well. And I think, God rest her soul, I think most of that was on my mom. But you take
hmm,
some moms will never look at their sons' wives with anything other than disdain because they've taken them away from them. And that's
interesting.
that's a lot more common than one might think.
Yeah,
I saw it
yeah,
firsthand. And the other thing was, I was just thinking about this because the same couple that's coming over for Thanksgiving tomorrow was over a couple months ago. And so he's a West Point guy and a conservative guy, and so he's he and I are buds. We get along, and he's not a bombastic guy. He's a pretty low key guy. But we were talking about stuff, and the other woman, Amy, she's wearing an Apple Watch. And she goes, I'm getting a decibel reading on my watch. Can you guys fucking calm down? No shit, Jim. I mean, you've known me for a while, and I can get loud. I've had both of my daughters say to me on more than one occasion, Dad, you're getting loud. You're getting loud. I'm like, I'm sorry. So, I can overwhelm a conversation. I'm well aware of that. And I've been conscious more later on in life of being just, why do you have to say anything? Just be
Mhm.
quiet, you know?
Yeah, that kind of capsulizes the period I'm in. It, I don't even care. Like I don't want the drama. I don't want the confrontation. It's good. You do you, and I'll do me, and it doesn't matter because you just get to a point where you let go, and again, in a healthy way, you just accept things as they are, and it's not judgment. I think everybody's doing the best they can, and you wish the best for them. It's not that you stop caring, but you certainly start. You have to um, be less attached to the outcomes of what the
Totally.
expectations
Yeah.
are of their lives. But back to more people, more problems. These numbers multiply when you have
No,
children
they
and
do.
grandchildren, and then
They do. They do. And there's all kinds of dynamics. And there's to me, there's two kinds of dynamics. Some of them are obvious and others are going on. You don't even know they're going on. What's
yeah,
driving that behavior? I didn't know that happened between those two
yeah,
people, you know?
yeah.
So I think that to your point, kind of in the context of our 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years thing, I think that we're both seemingly in a place where you said, it's not that I don't care, it's that it's not worth the energy. It's not worth the pain.
Mhm,
It's not
mhm.
worth the
Yeah.
time. It's not worth, like, I'm not
Mhm.
going to convince anybody of anything. But when I was in my
No, you're not.
30s, it might,
Not that day.
but when I was in my 30s, I was under the impression I could influence everybody,
Mhm.
and that was just
Yeah,
ignorance.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think with experience, well, like we've said many times on previous episodes, you can either be the old guy on the rocking chair with the shotgun in his underwear screaming at the kids to get off my fucking lawn,
Mhm.
or you can
Mhm.
be that's Uncle Mark. He's my favorite uncle.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
that's what I've chosen to try and,
Mhm.
and and do. So the last one is emotional health, the
Mhm.
overall emotional atmosphere, such as whether it is supportive, affectionate, or critical and isolating. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I am it's so funny, man. When I see my father, we hug like hard and he kisses me
Mhm.
on the forehead. And
Mhm.
when I see my brother, we hug really hard. My mother wasn't a hugger at all. My mother was it wasn't really even affectionate. And it's
Mhm.
really odd when I used to see my children try to be affectionate with her, and she would be more affectionate with them, but still they would bristle because they were so used to me and
Mhm.
just getting bear hugged and kissed and I love you and it's so great to see you. But that doesn't happen with everybody.
Mhm.
Some people are not doing that. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. When it says emotional health, what comes to mind is the comparison that goes on. How do you not compare yourself, your family to your siblings or to their lives and to their kids? I find this almost overwhelmingly difficult for some people because you're talking about your children and then in comparison to theirs. How do you not compare, on a scale of
Well, it's an interesting point you make because my girlfriend has three kids and I have three kids and they're of similar age
yeah,
and they're all doing different, they're all taking on life in a different fashion.
yeah.
And I have said to her, she has a tendency, and I think this is a fair statement, to compare. And I immediately say, I'm not doing that. Okay.
Hmm.
And between you, me, and the lamppost, I'm going to win that competition more often than not, which is, I've said, I've had this discussion with her. That is a perfect example of we're not doing that. Okay, there is no winner in that conversation. You're going to
Yeah.
get mad at me. I'm going to get mad at you. We're going to have doubts about this or doubts about that. And back to our original conversation, sometimes it's just better to stop talking.
Yeah. 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 We got a few more minutes. I mean, I'm interested. Go ahead and read off the impacts of family dynamics. I think there's some three bullet points here that are worthy of mentioning, and we'll
Okay,
make some
yeah. In
comments
the
after
in the
that.
in the
Yeah.
category of the impact of family dynamics, the first bullet is individual development. Family
Hmm.
dynamics profoundly impact a child's sense of self, sense of self-worth, and
Hmm.
how they interact with the world. Um,
Yeah, I think that's true. I think this is where you're held to a standard. You're compared to your cousins. If I remember when I was growing up, if my older cousin was, say, playing football and that was a big deal, there's no question I inspired to be like them,
yep.
and that had a huge impact on my childhood. So again, back to the time periods in your life, I
No,
think
I
these,
remember. Yeah, I
yeah, yeah,
remember playing catch with my uncle, who was a
yep,
professional baseball player, and
wow,
he
yeah,
had a particular. He didn't. We didn't play catch for fun. He had rules, and he was
yeah,
6'5", about 230, and he was a big, tall, handsome guy with a big head of hair. He was a
wow,
stunning human, and
wow.
I admired the shit out of him.
Yeah, that's a cool story though, but that's yeah, that speaks to this, right? And
It
a sense of
totally
self-worth.
speaks to
Yeah.
that. And then
Yeah.
my uncle Kevin, my father's eldest of 11 children, he
Yeah.
was a Navy PT boat commander and a couple Purple Hearts and a
Yeah.
boxing champion. He was a tough motherfucker, and he
Yeah.
was a recovered alcoholic. I never knew him drunk, so
Yeah.
he was always smiling and just wisdom. And he would say things like, you ever want to disappear somebody? Just give me a call. I know some guys. He talked like that. He was fucking
Yeah.
hilarious.
Now, what a
But
great way to kind of wrap this up because, like you said, you forget about the benefits of having these family events.
oh
And
yeah,
Thanksgiving is one of these that, it becomes a big part of who we are.
yeah,
Those
yeah.
personalities, those stories. So very, very
Well,
cool.
it's and you can, like anything in life, you can take the good out of it or you can take the bad
Yeah.
out of it, right? So the
Yeah.
next bullet is health and well-being. Healthy family dynamics are linked to better physical and mental health outcomes, while unhealthy dynamics sometimes lead to adverse childhood experiences.
Mhm.
ACEs are associated with a higher risk of problems. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
when I
Yeah.
was growing up, Jim, I told you, I thought white picket fence. I thought,
Hmm.
family structure, everything's going to church, going to school, playing sports. It's like, and then as we get older, people just start getting problems, and everybody handles life differently. And when you bring addiction to the Thanksgiving table or you bring mental illness to the Thanksgiving
Yeah.
table, and we've all probably had experience with that. I certainly
Sure.
have.
Oh, I absolutely have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This, like you said, that this explains a lot of things. The dynamics, these comparisons back to different family comparisons, they don't feel worthy. They don't feel like they've met the expectations of the other family members. This all comes out during these time periods, whether somebody's saying it or not. These are the
Mhm.
emotions that get surfaced.
Well, and then the final bullet is an adaptation to change. Dynamics are also shaped by a family's ability to adapt to life events, such as a child growing up and moving out. We were
Mhm.
talking about that earlier. I think it was Christmas last year. My both my daughters brought their boyfriends with them,
Mhm.
and they're much more concerned about that encounter than I am. I'm completely relaxed because that's just who I am. And they've got good judgment, and they had both been talking to me about these men, and the way they were talking about them, I was fairly certain things would be fine and I would like them because it's not like I met them and I had never heard anything about them before, but they were both looked me right in the eye, smiled, shook a firm handshake. So nice to meet you, Mr. Aylward. I said, call me Mark. Thank you. And we had a
Mhm.
blast. But that
Very
could have
cool.
just as easily been a clusterfuck, right? What if one of these guys was a dick?
Sure.
You know? So,
Well, like you said, they were somewhat pre-screened before they got there, so you don't.
well,
Obviously
that's
your
the
daughters have
whole,
good judgment.
your daughter, if she hasn't already, is going to bring home a guy, and your son's brought home a woman, and
Yeah.
my daughters have brought home men, and I've met their other boyfriends as well, and so we've had some experience. But what's hilarious, Jim, and maybe this is what we end on, I don't know, is
Yeah.
my daughters are petrified of my opinion of them. And
of their boyfriends.
yeah, I
Yeah,
understand why that is, but I don't think I've given them any reason to do that. And
that's good though.
I
That's
think
a
about that a lot. I think
yeah,
about that a lot because I don't want them to feel pressure about that. But to
yeah.
your point, you bring in non-family members or kids or grandkids, the whole thing changes. But I just
More
hope
people,
that
more
everybody,
problems.
yeah, I just hope everybody behaves themselves. I hope everybody has a good time. And for any of you guys out there that are like Jim or me, maybe you just shut the fuck up for the day.
Absolutely.
It's an option. It's out there. And just to finish up, if anybody's out there and this resonates with you and you think other men might benefit from it, particularly this time of year, I suppose, the best thing you can do for us is head over to Apple Podcasts and give us some stars and write a quick sentence of review. And because that really helps spread the word. Our downloads are going up, our reach is expanding, and we're talking about doing some things to make that even more aggressive so that we're getting in the eyes and ears and hearts of more men to talk about stuff they might not talk about. So if you could go over to Apple and do that for us, that would be awesome. And everybody have a wonderful holiday.